The marble floors of the Ashford Museum swallowed sound, in a way that always made Maya feel like she was walking through a held breath. Her flashlight cut a pale arc across the darkened corridor, illuminating the gilded frames and glass cases that lined the walls like silent sentinels. The museum had closed 3 hours ago, the last of the evening's private donors finally ushered out by the exhausted curatorial staff. Now it was just her, the cameras, and the quiet hum of the climate control system. Maya adjusted the waistband of her uniform trousers, the fabric pulling slightly across her hips. The museum-issued clothing had never been designed for a body like hers. Full curves, soft stomach, thighs that touched when she walked. She'd had to order 3 sizes up just to get the shirt to button across her chest, and even then, the seams strained when she reached for anything above shoulder height. The donors had noticed. They always noticed. She could still hear the echo of their laughter from earlier that evening, the way the woman in the emerald gown had leaned toward her companion and whispered, "They'll hire anyone these days, won't they? I suppose she's here to scare off thieves with her sheer mass." The man beside her had chuckled, a wet, condescending sound, and Maya had kept her face perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the middle distance, the way she'd learned to do over 32 years of being seen and dismissed in the same breath. But she'd noticed everything about them. The woman's emerald gown was a Valentino, last season, altered poorly at the hem. The man's watch was a Patek Philippe, but the clasp was aftermarket, a sign of either financial strain or a counterfeit. They'd spent exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds in front of the Caravaggio, which was 3 minutes less than the average visitor with any genuine interest in Baroque chiaroscuro. They weren't art lovers. They were there for the spectacle, the networking, the chance to be seen at an exclusive event funded by the Moretti family. Maya knew about the Morettis. Everyone in the city knew about the Morettis. They owned half the waterfront, 3 construction companies, and, if the rumors were true, a significant portion of the city's underground economy. Dante Moretti, the current head of the family, was a man who moved through the world like a blade wrapped in silk. She'd seen him twice now, both times during these private exhibitions. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a Renaissance coin. His eyes were the color of aged whiskey, and they missed nothing. The first time she'd seen him, he'd paused at the security desk, looked at her name badge and said, "Maya, you've been here 4 years. You know this building better than anyone." It wasn't a question. She'd nodded, and he'd walked away, leaving behind the faint scent of sandalwood and something sharper, like ozone after a storm. The second time, he'd caught her watching him. She'd been standing near the East Gallery entrance, her hands clasped behind her back, and he'd turned from a conversation with a city councilman and met her eyes. The look had lasted only a second, but it had sent something electric down her spine. Not fear, something else, something she didn't have a name for. Now, in the silence of the closed museum, she walked her usual route. East Gallery first, then the Renaissance Hall, then the modern wing, then back through the main atrium. She knew every painting, every sculpture, every artifact. She knew which cameras had blind spots. The one in the northeast corner of the Renaissance Hall had a 2-foot gap where the wall curved, a flaw she'd reported 3 times to the security director, who'd nodded and done nothing. She knew which donors lingered too long near the smaller pieces, which ones asked too many questions about the security systems. She knew the provenance of every major work in the collection, not because it was her job, but because she'd spent her breaks reading the catalogs, memorizing the placards, losing herself in the stories behind the art. Art had been her escape since she was a girl, growing up in a cramped apartment with a mother who worked double shifts and a father who'd left before she could walk. The library had been her sanctuary. The heavy art books her windows into worlds where beauty mattered, where bodies like hers were painted by Rubens and celebrated by Renoir. She dreamed of being a curator, of walking through galleries and speaking about brushstrokes and historical context with the kind of authority that made people listen. But life had a way of closing doors. There had been no money for college, then no time, then no belief that someone who looked like her could belong in that world. So she'd taken the security job, telling herself it was temporary, and 4 years had passed like a slow exhale. She was in the Renaissance Hall when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, not the creak of the old building settling, not the hum of the AVAC, but something deliberate, a soft scrape, like rubber sole against marble, coming from the direction of the Special Exhibitions Gallery. Maya stopped. Her flashlight beam held steady. She listened. There it was again, a whisper of movement, then a click that might have been a latch or a lock. The Special Exhibitions Gallery was where the Moretti-funded exhibition was being held. Eternal Vows, Marriage and Power in Renaissance Italy. It was a collection of paintings, documents, and artifacts centered around the political marriages of noble families. The centerpiece was a painting called The Binding of Houses, attributed to a lesser-known student of Titian. It depicted a wedding scene, the bride and groom surrounded by family members whose faces were rendered with unsettling realism. The painting itself was valuable, insured for several million, but it wasn't the most valuable piece in the museum. That honor belonged to a small Vermeer in the Dutch master's room, a painting so precious it had its own dedicated security system. Maya's radio was at her hip. She could call it in, standard protocol, but something made her hesitate. The security office was on the other side of the building, and by the time anyone responded, whoever was in that gallery could be gone. Or worse, they could have already taken what they came for. She moved toward the Special Exhibitions Gallery, her footsteps silent on the marble. She'd learned to walk quietly years ago, a skill born from a childhood spent trying not to wake her exhausted mother. The corridor leading to the gallery was lined with smaller pieces, etchings, cameos, a display of antique keys. She passed them without looking, her attention fixed on the door ahead. The gallery door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light, not the museum's ambient lighting, but something sharper, more focused, spilled through the gap. Maya pressed herself against the wall and peered through. 2 figures moved inside. They were dressed in dark clothing, their faces obscured by masks, but their movements were precise, professional. One was working on the security housing around the binding of houses, while the other stood watch, a small flashlight in hand. They weren't amateurs. They'd bypassed the external alarms somehow, and they were working quickly, efficiently. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, but her mind was calm, analytical. She cataloged what she saw. The painting was still in place, the frame intact. They hadn't cut the canvas yet, which meant they were planning to take the whole thing, frame and all. That was unusual. Most thieves cut the canvas from the frame. It was faster, easier to transport. Taking the entire framed painting meant they had a specific buyer who wanted the original frame, or they were working under very specific instructions. She stepped back from the door, her mind racing. The radio was still an option, but if she used it, the thieves might hear. The museum's silent alarm was triggered by a button at the security desk, but she was too far away. Her phone was in her locker. Museum policy. No personal devices on shift. She was alone, unarmed, and the only thing standing between 2 professional thieves and a multi-million-dollar painting. But she wasn't helpless. She knew this building. She knew its secrets. Maya retreated down the corridor, her steps silent, and turned into a service stairwell that the public never saw. The stairs led down to the basement, where the conservation labs and storage rooms were located. But there was another room down there, one that most of the staff had forgotten about. The old security hub, decommissioned when the new system was installed 5 years ago. The equipment was outdated, but the panic button was still connected to the police station. She'd found it during her first year, exploring the building on her breaks, learning every corner and crevice. The basement was cold, the air thick with the smell of old paper and chemicals. She moved quickly, her flashlight beam bouncing off the concrete walls. The old security hub was at the end of a narrow corridor, behind a door marked "Electrical, Authorized Personnel Only." She pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was small, dusty, filled with outdated monitors, and a control panel that looked like something from a Cold War bunker. But the panic button was there, a red circle set into the wall, protected by a plastic cover. She flipped the cover open and pressed the button. Nothing happened. No alarm, no flashing lights, just silence. She pressed it again, still nothing. The system had been disconnected, or sabotaged. Maya stood in the dark, her breath coming in short, controlled bursts. The thieves had known about the old hub. They'd disabled it, which meant they had inside information. Someone who knew the museum's systems, its weaknesses, its forgotten corners. She thought of the security director, a man named Harrison, who dismissed her reports about the camera blind spots with a wave of his hand. She thought of the young curator, Ilara, who'd been acting strangely all week, nervous, jumpy, flinching at sudden sounds. Ilara was the one who'd overseen the installation of the Moretti exhibition. She knew every piece, every security measure, every vulnerability. But Ilara wasn't a criminal. Maya had seen her in the galleries after hours, standing in front of paintings with tears in her eyes, whispering to herself like she was saying goodbye. There was a sadness in her that Maya recognized, a loneliness that mirrored her own. Maya left the old hub and climbed the stairs back to the main floor. She needed to get to the security desk, to trigger the main alarm, even if it meant risking exposure. But when she reached the top of the stairs, she heard voices. Not the thieves. These were coming from the direction of the main entrance. She crept forward and saw 2 more figures in the atrium. More thieves. The heist was bigger than she'd thought. She was trapped between 2 groups, with no way to call for help, and no weapon, except her flashlight and her knowledge of the building. Then she remembered the frame. The binding of houses was valuable. Yes, but during the installation, she'd overheard Ilara talking to the conservation team about the frame. It was original, 16th century, and it had been modified at some point in its history. There was a hollow space in the bottom rail, a compartment that had been sealed for centuries. The conservation team had debated whether to open it, but the Moretti family had insisted the frame remain untouched. "It's part of the piece's integrity," the family's representative had said. "Don't disturb it." Maya had thought it was strange at the time. The Morettis weren't known for their respect for artistic integrity. They were known for their pragmatism, their ruthlessness, their ability to find value in things that others overlooked. What if the painting wasn't the target? What if the frame was? She moved back toward the special exhibitions gallery, her mind piecing together fragments of information. The Moretti exhibition, the specific instructions to leave the frame untouched, the thieves' focus on taking the entire painting, frame and all, the disabled panic button, the inside information. Someone wanted that frame, someone who knew what was inside it. Maya reached the gallery door again and looked through the gap. The thieves had removed the painting from the wall and were carefully wrapping it in a protective cloth. They were almost done. In a few minutes, they would be gone, and whatever was hidden in that frame would be gone with them. She couldn't stop them physically, She was one woman against at least 4 professionals, but she could make sure they didn't get what they came for. Maya retreated to a supply closet she'd passed earlier. Inside, she found what she was looking for, a conservation toolkit, left behind by the restoration team. She grabbed a small screwdriver, a pair of tweezers, and a flashlight with a focused beam. Then she circled around to the back entrance of the gallery, a service door used by the curatorial staff. The door was unlocked. The thieves had probably used it to enter. She slipped inside, staying low, using the display cases as cover. The thieves were focused on the painting, their backs to her. She moved slowly, carefully, until she was behind a large pedestal displaying a marble bust. From her position, she could see the painting clearly. It was propped against the wall, the frame glinting in the thieves' flashlight beams. The bottom rail was thick, ornate, carved with a pattern of intertwined vines and heraldic symbols. If there was a compartment, it would be there. She waited. The thieves finished wrapping the painting and lifted it between them. They moved toward the service door, their footsteps muffled by the carpet. Maya held her breath as they passed within 3 feet of her hiding spot. Then they were gone, the door swinging shut behind them. The gallery was silent. Maya stood up, her legs trembling. She crossed to the empty wall where the painting had hung and looked at the space it had left behind. The wall was bare, the hooks empty, but on the floor, caught in the carpet fibers, was a small piece of wood, a splinter from the frame, dislodged during the removal. She picked it up. It was old, dry, the varnish cracked with age, and on one edge, there was a trace of something that wasn't wood. Paper. Very old paper. Her heart raced. She was right. There was something inside the frame. But the painting was gone. The thieves had taken it, and with it, whatever secret the frame had held for 400 years, unless they hadn't taken the right frame. Maya thought back to the installation. She'd watched the conservation team hang the painting, but she'd also watched them handle the other pieces in the exhibition. There was a second frame, almost identical to the first, hanging on the opposite wall. It contained a mirror, not a painting. A reproduction of a Renaissance mirror, created for the exhibition to show how frames were used in domestic settings. The frame was a replica, but it had been modeled so closely on the original that even the curators had trouble telling them apart. What if the thieves had taken the wrong one? She turned and looked at the mirror on the opposite wall. It was still there, its surface reflecting the empty space where the painting had been. She crossed to it and examined the frame. The same intertwined vines, the same heraldic symbols. But when she looked closely, she saw the difference. The original frame had a small crack in the bottom left corner, a flaw that had been documented in the conservation report. This frame didn't have that crack. The thieves had taken the replica. The real frame was still here. Maya's hands were shaking as she lifted the mirror off the wall. It was heavy, the frame solid wood, and she had to brace it against her hip to keep from dropping it. She carried it to a conservation table in the corner of the gallery and laid it face down. The bottom rail was sealed, but the seal was old, the adhesive brittle with age. She took the screwdriver from the toolkit and carefully worked it into the seam. The wood creaked, protested, and then gave way with a soft crack. Inside the hollow space was a document. It was folded, the paper yellowed and fragile, but the writing was still legible. It was in Italian, the script elegant and formal, with signatures at the bottom and a wax seal that had crumbled with age. Maya couldn't read Italian, but she recognized the format. It was a contract, a marriage contract, judging by the names and the dates. And at the bottom, beneath the signatures, was a name that made her blood run cold. Moretti. The document was a marriage contract between the Moretti family and another noble house, dated 1587. It detailed the transfer of lands, titles, and wealth that would occur upon the marriage. And according to the terms, those lands and titles would remain with the Moretti family in perpetuity, as long as the marriage was legally recognized. But there was more. A second document, folded inside the first. This one was newer, the paper less yellowed, the ink darker. It was in English, and it was a legal challenge to the Moretti claim, filed in 1923 by a rival family. The challenge had been dismissed, but the document noted that the original marriage contract had been lost, and without it, the Moretti claim could be contested. The original marriage contract, the one that was currently in Maya's hands. She understood now. The frame had been hiding this document for centuries. The Moretti family had known it was there, or at least suspected it. They'd funded the exhibition to get access to the frame, to retrieve the contract before anyone else could find it. But someone else had found out. Someone had hired the thieves to steal the painting, thinking the contract was still inside the frame. And the thieves had taken the wrong frame. Maya carefully folded the documents and tucked them into the inside pocket of her uniform jacket. She needed to get out of here, to find somewhere safe to think. But as she turned toward the service door, she heard footsteps in the corridor, multiple footsteps, coming closer. The thieves were coming back. She looked around the gallery, searching for a hiding place. The conservation table was too exposed. The display cases were too small. But there was a storage closet in the corner, used for exhibition supplies. She grabbed the mirror, the real frame, now empty of its secret, and carried it with her into the closet, pulling the door shut just as the gallery door opened. Through the slats in the closet door, she watched as 3 figures entered the gallery. One of them was the thief who'd been working on the security housing. Another was a woman, tall and angular, with sharp features and cold eyes. The third was someone Maya recognized. Harrison, the security director. "It's not here," the woman said, her voice clipped and furious. "The frame is empty. There's nothing inside." "It has to be here," Harrison said. "The record said the contract was hidden in the frame, the original frame." "Then where is it?" the woman demanded. "We took the painting. The frame was intact. There was no compartment, no hidden document, just wood and canvas." Harrison was silent for a moment. Then he said, "The mirror." "What mirror?" "There's a mirror in the exhibition, a replica frame. But what if it's not a replica? What if the curators made a mistake? What if the real frame is the one holding the mirror?" Maya's grip tightened on the mirror in her hands. She'd been right. The thieves had taken the wrong one, but now they knew. The woman turned toward the wall where the mirror had hung, the empty wall. "It's gone," she said. "Someone took it." "The night guard," Harrison said. "The fat one. She's the only one here. She must have moved it." Maya's jaw clenched. The fat one. Of course. Even now, in the middle of a heist, that was how he described her. "Find her," the woman said. "Find the mirror. And find that contract. If the Morettis get their hands on it, everything we've worked for is gone." The 3 of them left the gallery, their footsteps fading down the corridor. Maya waited, counting to 100 before she moved. Then she slipped out of the closet, the mirror still in her arms, and made her way toward the staff exit. She needed to get out of the museum. She needed to find somewhere safe to figure out her next move. But as she reached the exit, she heard a voice behind her. "Maya." She turned. Ilara, the young curator, was standing in the doorway of the conservation lab. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Ilara," Maya said, "what are you doing here? It's the middle of the night." "I couldn't sleep," Ilara said. I've been so worried about the exhibition, about the painting. I came to check on it. She looked at the mirror in Maya's arms. What happened? Why do you have the mirror? Maya hesitated. She didn't know if she could trust Alara, but the fear in the young woman's eyes looked genuine, and Maya remembered the tears she'd seen, the whispered goodbyes. The painting was stolen, Maya said. They took the wrong frame. The real frame is this one, and there's something inside it, something the Morettis want, something other people want too. Ilara's face went even paler. The contract, she whispered. Oh God, they found out about the contract. You knew? I suspected. When we were installing the exhibition, I found references to it in the historical records. A marriage contract that could change the ownership of half the city's real estate. I told Mr. Moretti about it, and he told me to keep it quiet. He said he'd handle it. And did you tell anyone else? Alara shook her head. No, I swear. But someone else must have found out. Someone who wants to use the contract against the Morettis. Maya looked at the mirror in her arms, then at Alara's terrified face. We need to get out of here, she said. There are thieves in the building, and the security director is working with them. Harrison? Ilara's eyes widened. But he's been here for years. He's a traitor, Maya said. And if they find us, we're both in danger. Come on. She led Alara through the staff corridors, avoiding the main galleries, until they reached a side exit that opened onto a loading dock. The night air was cold, the sky overcast, the streetlights casting pools of orange light on the wet pavement. Where are we going? Ilara asked. Somewhere safe, Maya said. Somewhere they won't think to look. She didn't know where that was yet, but she knew one thing. She had the contract. She had the power. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't going to be overlooked. They walked for 20 minutes, sticking to side streets and alleys, until they reached a neighborhood of old warehouses and converted lofts. Maya led Alara to a building with a faded sign that read, Moretti Imports. It was one of the family's legitimate businesses, a front for their more questionable operations. She'd learned about it during her research into the Moretti family, the kind of research she did in her spare time, because she was curious, because she wanted to understand the forces that shaped her city. This is a Moretti building, Alara said, her voice trembling. Are you sure this is safe? It's the safest place in the city right now, Maya said. The people who want the contract are the Moretti's enemies. If we give the contract to Dante Moretti, we're protected. If we keep it, we're targets. She pressed the buzzer beside the door. A moment later, a voice crackled through the intercom. We're closed. I need to speak to Dante Moretti, Maya said. Tell him it's Maya, the night guard from the museum. I have something he's looking for. There was a long pause. Then the door buzzed open. They climbed a flight of stairs to a second-floor office. The room was sparse but elegant, with exposed brick walls and a large desk made of dark wood. Behind the desk sat a man Maya didn't recognize, one of Moretti's lieutenants, probably. He was broad and stern-faced, with a gun holstered at his side. Wait here, he said. Mr. Moretti will be here shortly. Maya and Alara sat on a leather sofa against the wall. Alara was shaking, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Maya reached over and placed a hand on hers. It's going to be okay, Maya said. We're going to be okay. Alara looked at her, and for a moment, the fear in her eyes was replaced by something else. Gratitude, respect, maybe even admiration. How did you know? Alara asked. About the frame? About the contract? I pay attention, Maya said. It's what I do. People look at me and see a fat security guard. They don't see someone who reads art history books for fun. They don't see someone who memorizes every painting, every frame, every detail of every exhibition. They don't see me at all. I see you, Ilara said quietly. Maya looked at her. Ilara was young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, and eyes that held a sadness Maya recognized. She was beautiful, in a fragile way, like a watercolor painting, left out in the rain. "Thank you," Maya said. The door opened, and Dante Moretti walked in. He was even more imposing up close. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair swept back from a face that was both beautiful and dangerous. He was wearing a charcoal suit, the jacket unbuttoned, the shirt beneath crisp and white. His eyes, that deep whiskey color, swept the room and landed on Maya. "Maya," he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, but there was something beneath it. Urgency, concern. "You said you have something I'm looking for." Maya stood up. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the folded documents. "The marriage contract," she said, "from 1587. It was hidden in the frame of the mirror. The thieves took the painting, but they took the wrong frame. The real frame was the one holding the mirror." Dante crossed the room and took the documents from her hands. He unfolded them carefully, his eyes scanning the Italian text. His expression didn't change, but Maya saw his jaw tighten. "You read Italian?" he asked. "No," Maya said, "but I recognize the format, and the name, Moretti." He looked at her, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then he turned to his lieutenant. "Get the car. We're going to the estate." "What about them?" the lieutenant asked, nodding toward Maya and Ilara. "They're coming with us," Dante said. "They're under my protection now." The drive to the Moretti estate took 40 minutes. Maya sat in the back of a black SUV, Ilara beside her, Dante in the front passenger seat. The city lights gave way to suburbs, then to countryside, until they reached a gated estate with a mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from Tuscany. Inside, the mansion was warm and opulent, with marble floors and frescoed ceilings, and furniture that belonged in a museum. Dante led them to a library, where an older man was waiting. He had the same dark hair and sharp features as Dante, but his temples were gray, and his eyes held the weight of decades. "My uncle," Dante said, "Vincenzo Moretti, the head of the family." Vincenzo looked at the documents, his hands trembling slightly as he read. When he finished, he looked up at Maya. "You found this?" he asked. "Yes," Maya said. "It was hidden in the frame of a mirror in the museum's exhibition. The thieves took the painting, but they took the wrong frame. And you brought it to us?" "It belongs to your family," Maya said. "I'm just the night guard. I protect what's in the museum, even if what's in the museum belongs to someone else." Vincenzo smiled, a slow, approving expression. "You're more than a night guard, I think." "She is," Dante said. His voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made Maya's heart skip. "She's the one who noticed the frame. She's the one who figured out the thieves' mistake. She's the one who saved our family's legacy." Vincenzo nodded. "Then she will be rewarded." "I don't need a reward," Maya said. "I just want to make sure the people who did this are caught. The thieves. Harrison. Whoever hired them." "They will be," Dante said. "I promise you that." There was a reception at the museum 3 days later. A celebration of the exhibition's success, despite the attempted theft. The painting had been recovered. Dante's men had tracked down the thieves within hours, and the mirror was back on display, its secret now known to the world. Maya stood near the entrance of the main gallery, wearing her uniform, her hands clasped behind her back. The donors were there, the same ones who had mocked her before. The woman in the emerald gown was sipping champagne, laughing at something her companion said. They didn't notice Maya. They never did. But Dante noticed her. He crossed the room, his presence parting the crowd like a ship's prow through water. He was wearing a black suit, his hair perfectly styled, his eyes fixed on her. "Maya," he said, "walk with me." She hesitated, then fell into step beside him. The donors watched, their expressions shifting from curiosity to confusion to something that might have been envy. "I want to show you something," Dante said. He led her to the special exhibitions gallery, where the mirror was now displayed in a glass case. Beside it was a placard explaining the discovery of the marriage contract and its historical significance. "Read the last line," Dante said. Maya leaned closer and read. The contract was discovered by museum security guard Maya Chen, whose attention to detail and quick thinking prevented its theft and preserved a vital piece of the Moretti family history. She stared at the words, her throat tight. "You did this? You deserve the credit," Dante said. "You saved something that my family has been searching for generations. You deserve more than a placard. You deserve a future." "What do you mean?" He turned to face her, his eyes holding hers. "I've been watching you, Maya. Not just tonight. For months. I've seen how you look at the art. I've seen how you notice things that no one else notices. I've seen how they treat you, the donors, the staff, and I've seen how you endure it with dignity. You're wasted as a security guard. You should be a curator. You should be running this museum." "I don't have the qualifications," she said. "I never went to college. I don't care about qualifications," Dante said. "I care about passion, knowledge, dedication. You have all of those things. And I have influence. Let me help you." Maya looked at him, this dangerous man who had the power to destroy lives, but was offering to build hers. She thought about all the years she'd spent invisible, overlooked, dismissed. She thought about the girl who'd read art books in the library and dreamed of a different life. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care?" Dante was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated, to be seen as nothing more than a name, a reputation, a threat. People look at me and see a criminal. They don't see the man who loves his family, who values loyalty, who wants to leave something behind that's more than blood and money. You see things that others don't. I want you to see me." Maya's heart was pounding. She thought about Ilara, who had looked at her with admiration in the warehouse. She thought about the donors, who would never look at her the same way again. She thought about herself, the woman she'd always wanted to be, the woman she was finally becoming. "Okay," she said. "Help me." Dante smiled. It was a rare expression, one that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. "Good. There's a reception tonight. The donors are all here. I'm going to make an announcement." "What kind of announcement?" "You'll see." He led her back to the main gallery, where the donors were gathered around a podium. Vincenzo Moretti was standing at the microphone, his voice carrying through the room. "And so, on behalf of the Moretti family, I would like to thank everyone who made this exhibition possible. But there is one person in particular who deserves our gratitude. A person who, until recently, was overlooked by this institution and by many of the people in this room." Maya felt the eyes of the donors turn toward her. The woman in the emerald gown looked confused. Her companion looked uncomfortable. "Maya Chen," Vincenzo continued, "is the night guard who discovered the hidden contract and prevented its theft. Without her, a vital piece of our family's history would have been lost. In recognition of her service, the Moretti family is establishing a scholarship in her name, to be awarded annually to a student pursuing a career in art history or museum studies. Additionally, We are pleased to announce that Miss Chen has accepted a position as assistant curator of Renaissance art at the Ashford Museum, effective immediately. The room erupted in applause. Maya stood frozen, her face flushed, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to shed. Dante was beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. "You deserve this," he murmured. "All of it." The woman in the emerald gown approached, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and forced politeness. "Congratulations, Miss Chen. I had no idea you were so knowledgeable." "Most people don't," Maya said. "They're too busy looking at my body to notice my brain." The woman's face went red. She opened her mouth to respond, but Dante stepped forward. "I think you've said enough," he said, his voice cold. "Miss Chen has more important people to speak with." He guided Maya away, leaving the woman sputtering behind them. Elara was waiting near the refreshment table, a glass of champagne in each hand. "I knew you could do it," Elara said, handing Maya a glass. "I knew from the moment I saw you looking at the Caravaggio. You see things the rest of us miss." "Thank you," Maya said, "for believing in me. Thank you for saving the exhibition, and for saving me. I was so scared that night. I didn't know what to do, but you did. You always do." Maya looked at Elara, at the gratitude in her eyes, and felt something shift inside her. She'd spent so long feeling alone, invisible, unwanted. But she wasn't alone. She had Elara. She had Dante. She had a future. The reception continued, but Maya found herself drifting toward the windows, looking out at the city lights. Dante joined her, his presence a warm shadow at her side. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," she said. "How much my life has changed in 3 days. How different everything looks from up here." "You were always meant to be up here," Dante said. "You just needed someone to open the door." "And you're the one who opened it?" "I'm the one who saw the door was there. You're the one who walked through it." Maya turned to face him. "What happens now? Between us?" Dante's expression softened. "Whatever you want to happen. I'm not going to pressure you. I'm not going to make demands. I've spent my life taking what I want, but I don't want to take you. I want you to choose me. And if I do, then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again." Maya looked at him. This man who was supposed to be a monster, who was supposed to be dangerous and cold and incapable of tenderness. She saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope he was trying to hide. She saw the man beneath the reputation. "I see you," she said. "Dante Moretti, I see you." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and strong around hers. "Then that's enough. That's everything." They stood together at the window, the city spread out before them like a promise. Behind them, the reception continued, the donors laughing and drinking, and pretending they'd always known Maya was special. But Maya didn't care about them anymore. She cared about the man beside her, the woman who'd become her friend, and the future she was finally brave enough to claim. The night guard had protected the wrong painting, but in doing so, she'd found the right life. Months passed. Maya settled into her new role as assistant curator, her days filled with research and cataloging, and the kind of work she'd always dreamed of doing. Elara became her closest friend, the two of them spending long hours in the conservation lab, discussing brushstrokes and provenance, and the stories behind the art. Dante was a constant presence, but he was patient. He took her to dinner, to gallery openings, to quiet walks along the river. He listened when she talked about her work, asked questions, remembered details. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel like she owed him anything. One evening, 6 months after the heist, he took her back to the museum. It was after hours, the galleries dark and silent, the way they'd been on the night everything changed. "Why are we here?" Maya asked. "I wanted to show you something," Dante said. He led her to the special exhibitions gallery, where the mirror was still on display. But beside it, there was a new piece, a painting, small and intimate, of a woman with curves and dark hair and eyes that held a quiet strength. "It's you," Maya whispered. "I commissioned it," Dante said, "from an artist I know. I wanted there to be a record of you in this museum, not just a placard, a painting, something that will last." Maya stared at the painting, at the way the artist had captured her likeness with such care and respect. She wasn't idealized or slimmed down, or made to look like someone else. She was herself, full and soft and beautiful. "Why?" she asked. "Because you belong here," Dante said. "You've always belonged here. I just wanted everyone else to see it." Maya turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "I love you," she said. The words came out before she could stop them, but she didn't want to stop them. They were true. They'd been true for months. Dante's expression broke open, the careful control he always maintained, crumbling into something raw and real. "I love you too," he said. "I've loved you since the moment I saw you standing at that security desk, looking at me like you could see right through me." He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, his hands cupping her face like she was something precious. Maya kissed him back, her heart full to bursting, her body alive with a joy she'd never thought she'd feel. When they finally pulled apart, Dante reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know it's fast," he said. "I know we have a lot to figure out, but I don't want to wait. I've spent my whole life waiting for something that mattered, and now I've found it. I've found you." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. It was antique, the band engraved with a pattern of intertwined vines. "It belonged to my grandmother," Dante said. "She was the one who told me about the contract, about the frame, about the legacy our family was trying to protect. She would have loved you." Maya looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Dante slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Maybe it had been. Maybe everything had been leading to this moment, from the night she'd taken the security job, to the night she'd found the contract, to the night she'd finally let herself be seen. The museum was silent around them, the paintings watching from the walls, the frames holding their secrets. But Maya wasn't keeping secrets anymore. She was done with hiding. She was done with being invisible. She was the woman who'd saved a legacy, the woman who'd found love in the most unexpected place, the woman who'd finally claimed her place in the world. And as Dante kissed her again, his arms wrapped around her curves, his heart beating against hers, she knew that this was only the beginning. The night guard had protected the wrong painting, but she'd found the right life, the right love, the right future, and she was never letting go.